My sister, my idol. My sister Mela was 20 when I was 12. She was beautiful. Mela wore the latest styles and hairdos, was intelligent and good-natured, while I was a pest. Wherever she went, I followed. She must have been a saint because she always let me tag along. In the summer of 1943, the occupying German nation sent Polish Jews from the town of Sosnowiec ghetto to Auschwitz. At that time, along with my 3 sisters, I was taken. We arrived at Auschwitz in a transport of 9,000 people. We were met by a horde of guards with guns, police clubs, and dogs who had been trained to tear you apart. The men were separated from the women and children. We were told to leave all our belongings behind and to march past the infamous, murderous Dr. Mengele. Dr. Mengele, with his white-gloved index finger, directed us to either the right or left line. The right was composed of young women slated for the Auschwitz slave labor concentration camp. The left line, composed mostly of women and children, was destined for the gas chamber. Dr. Mengele pointed Mela to the right. He pointed us, the 3 younger sisters, to the left. In an instant, without any deliberation, without thinking of the consequences, I ran from the left line to the right, leaving my 2 baby sisters to go to the gas chamber alone. Shortly after we arrived at Auschwitz, Mela came down with typhus and had to be relocated to the Riviera, a block reserved for the sick. Everyone knew that being sent there meant you would not return alive. My dilemma: should I go with Mela? I knew if I went with her, I would not return. After deliberating, I decided to go with my sister. One day, the head of the block, Bozenka, came to the cot where we were staying, naked, covered by a blanket that was full of pus, feces, and blood. Nobody took care of the sick. Bozenka informed me that the inmates were being sent to the gas chamber. She singled me out to save me. She would send me to a Christian barrack where she believed I would be safe. How could I look into Mela's eyes? Could I tell her that she was going to die? No, I could not face Mela. I felt myself turn to stone. I did not say anything. I followed Bozenka to a Christian barrack. I then decided that I was not worthy of living, and I vowed that I would not allow myself to grow or develop from that point on, from the point of being the 12-year-old skeleton that I was. Mela, my idol, would die, and I would not go with her. They took Mela to the gas chamber. I did not deserve to live. I had betrayed my sister.
What you've just heard was the powerful story of Holocaust survivor Brania Rubin Brandman, read by fellow Holocaust survivor Gita Ryle. Welcome to State of Mind. Being human and living well.
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 I'm your host, Deborah Sloss, licensed marriage and family therapist, and my pronouns are she, her. Brania just described some of her choices as acts of betrayal, but she was trapped in unimaginable double binds, impossible situations, and clearly she just did the best she could to survive. Brania tells us that writing and telling her story has been deeply healing for her. In this episode, we'll look at how writing itself can be a powerful tool for healing, helping us process emotion, find meaning, and support our mental health and well-being. This conversation was originally recorded back in 2023 as part of a 3-part series on how the arts can help us heal. For this remixed episode, we're revisiting the conversation and adding new reflections and updated content to deepen our understanding of how creative expression can support emotional wellness. If you'd like to explore more from this series, you can also check out episode 54 on the healing power of making art and episode 55 on healing through movement and dance. Joining me for today's conversation are poet, writer, editor, and teacher Patrice Vecchione, and two of her former students, Briar Spungen and Erin Kate Escobar. At the time of this interview, Patrice had been teaching poetry and creative writing for many years through her program, The Heart of the Word, Poetry and the Imagination. In her book, My Shouting, Shattered, Whispering Voice, A Guide to Writing Poetry and Speaking Your Truth, she invites writers of all ages to discover their voices, speak their truths, and express what matters most. Briar Spungen, who was then a junior at Carmel High School in California, had already been writing poetry for about a decade and was featured in Rattle's Young Poet Anthology in 2015. Growing up along the Big Sur coast of California, Briar's work draws on that landscape to reveal beauty in unexpected places, using imagery to reflect her own experiences and struggles with mental health. Erin Kate Escobar, who uses they/them pronouns, was born and raised in Santa Cruz, California, and at the time of this recording was living on Tongva and Chumash land in Los Angeles. They're the founder of Erin Kate Escobar Consulting, where they've helped organizations build more inclusive workplaces through diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging practices grounded in healing and anti-racism. While Erin Kate doesn't primarily identify as a writer, they say writing has always been central to their reflection and growth, a way to dream, to heal, and to make sense of the world. They began writing at age 5 through the Spectra Artists in the Classroom program, and by the time of this conversation, they had more than 30 years of experience with poetry and journaling as a queer, non-binary, multi-ethnic, Latin, Jewish person of color. Welcome to State of Mind, Patrice, Briar, and Erin Kate.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, Patrice, I'm wondering if we can start with you and you can help explain how this story of survival that was written by Brania Rubin Brandman came into being and why it was so important for her as the writer.
For several months, I worked with Brania, who's 91, as her writing coach. She lives in New York City. I'm in Monterey, so we met via Zoom. She gave me stories in rough draft to read, and I'd respond, and we'd discuss my comments and bring the stories into final form. You know, I've worked with many people who have survived difficult things, who wanted to get their stories on paper. Survivors of rape and child abuse, a woman whose father committed suicide, and more. But never before had I worked with someone who survived the atrocities and loss of nearly her entire family, who lived through the mass murder of over 6 million people. Brania and I connected right away. She reminded me of women I knew as a child in New York City, and our connection made it possible for me to be present for the trauma of her stories. I did my best to help her feel comfortable so that she could feel safe to write what she most needed to, the stories that had in great part defined her life. Brania was 12 when she was captured and taken to Auschwitz, and 17 years old when she was released. She didn't even know at the time if anyone in her family had survived. Her siblings, her parents, her grandparents had all died except for one brother, Mendek, who lived. For 50 years, Brania didn't speak about her experiences of the Holocaust. 50 years. She committed herself to not laughing or crying or growing. And you know, Brania is not tall. She's under 5 feet. But it's really the starvation that greatly contributed to her physical development. During those years, she told me it was only when she could hear a live orchestra that she was able to cry. Imagine the birth of her children, marriage, but only when she heard an orchestra. From what she shared with me for over several months, I don't think Bronya has ever forgiven herself for the unwinnable choices she had to make while she was incarcerated. But through therapy, time, through public speaking, and Bronya lit the first menorah at the White House last December, the first, 2022. And through writing, she's found ways to carry her experiences, to not be crushed by them, to triumph. When we are able to get what's terribly difficult down on paper, or really any of the stories of our lives, we can get a little distance from them. You get some perspective because it's on the paper. So it's a little distance from your heart. And then you can get new understanding. You can look at what you've written. You can think about it in the context of the rest of your life, and even just a little bit get free from that narrative. Should the writer wish, they can then share their work, as Bronya is doing with us today. So then the experiencer isn't carrying what happened all by themselves.
So, Patrice, we have many listeners right now who might be thinking to themselves, I'm not a writer, or I don't even like to write. So many people, including myself, sometimes think about the difficulty of writing school papers or essays. And I'm wondering what you'd want to say to those folks about how to think about the creative or expressive writing process differently.
First of all, I want to say I really understand. I think I became a writer because it's so difficult. It was so hard for me. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The author Thomas Mann said, a writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than for other people. It took me a really long time. I mean, I'm talking about decades to become at ease, more or less, with writing. Still, more than anything else, it called to me. So I think it's helpful to look at writing and writers in two distinct, though related ways. There's writing in a journal, writing notes to oneself as a tool to support mental health and to gain insight into your life. That's a way to deepen understanding. It's a way to work out problems, have a private dialogue, explore feelings and ideas, and record your life. That writing remains securely tucked in your journal, or maybe you share it with a friend or a therapist. I think of this as writing with a small w. We all use writing to convey information, and many of us don't find that overwhelming. I can easily write a grocery list or birthday card, notes in the margins of books, and I call that small w writing.
I do a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, we all need writing, and so that doesn't have the onus on it. But then we put the big W on, we suddenly are bending over, right? So the same person might write in a journal, do the same things that private writing does, but then you're the person at a particular time you decide, aha, I want to do something else with this. There's something here. It's calling me. And you realize that there may be a poem or a story, and perhaps you want to find an audience for this material in some way.
So, Patrice, given all that, I'm wondering, over all these years that you've been working with writers of all ages, what have you seen in terms of how the writing process helps heal and actually supports mental wellness?
For as similar as we all are to each other, each of us is the only one with our particular story and our particular experiences. And it's important to remember that if you don't tell your story, it will never be told. And so that to me is like, oh, that I have something to contribute. So that validates the process of telling your story. And that is very supportive for anybody at any age for their mental health. Barry Lopez said that sometimes a person needs a story more than food to survive. The process of writing fills and satisfies us in a primary, authentic way. Writing one's life can help create balance, peace, understanding, self-compassion, compassion for others, and it's a way to gain knowledge and to grow our authentic sense of ourselves. Somebody said, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? And so writing, you get to really do that. You get to see what you think. And it's enormously transformational. If you're honest with yourself on the page, you begin to recognize this is what I think. And here's what I once believed, but actually, I don't believe that anymore. You can come to embrace your experiences, no matter how difficult they may have been, to see yourself as the hero of your own story, not a minor character, And that's a big step to initiate change, create balance and strength, and make decisions that go beyond the page and into daily life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. You must be a writer.
You're pretty funny.
So also with us today are two of Patrice's former students, Briar and Erin Kate, both of whom continue to write in different ways in their lives today. So Briar, let's start with you. How did you get started writing, and what role does writing play in your life today?
Well, I'm not sure my words will be as eloquently spoken as Patricia's, but I've been writing I'm 16 now. I'm 17 in April, on April 2nd. And I've been writing for 10 years, which is most of my whole life.
Since you could pick up a pen pretty much.
Since I could write, I think I've been writing poetry, which is such a unique experience as a child growing up and experiencing that and understanding that that is the means by which it's a tool, really. For me, poetry's always been so ingrained within who I am because of how young I was when I started writing, that it's always been a tool for me to experience the world in ways that I can't regularly do. And this all started with Patrice. I mean, I went to Captain Cooper in Big Sur, and it's this tiny elementary school. I could count everyone I went to school with on probably 3 hands. And so that within itself is such a unique experience, having such a small community. And then we would have writing classes, I want to say weekly, starting in kindergarten, going through, I would say 4th or 5th grade. I mean, all through elementary school. And from that practice, I just continued and started utilizing that in my everyday life. And I do still. I wrote a poem last night, actually, when I had kind of a moment of calmness, which was really wonderful.
You told me when I was talking to you about coming on the show that writing is absolutely essential for you and how you process your emotions. Can you say more about how this works for you, and what kinds of emotions do you find yourself working through with writing?
Yeah, 100%. I know when we talked originally, we discussed a lot about grief and sadness and anger. Those are such big emotions, I think. I think when you feel emotions so heavily, as so many women and queer and minorities do, as so much pressure is being put on us on a daily basis. It's so essential to have an outlet where you can feel peace from that and you can gain understanding in who you are. And that's what poetry has always been about for me. I've always gone to writing poetry to collect my thoughts and really work through what I'm feeling. If I've gone through something really detrimental that's been changing my life, the first thing I do is write a poem. And that's how I work through those big emotions.
You're listening to State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss. Today's episode explores how writing can be a powerful tool for healing and supporting mental health and wellness. We're hearing about how creative expression through poetry, journaling, and storytelling can transform painful experiences and deepen self-understanding. If you're just joining us, you may want to go back and hear Brania Rubin Brandman's powerful story of Holocaust survival and how writing her story has helped her heal. We've also just heard from poet and teacher Patrice Vecchione, who shared how she guides others in using writing for self-discovery, along with reflections from her former student, Briar Spungen. After the break, we'll meet another of Patrice's former students, Erin Kate Escobar. Both Briar and Erin Kate share about how writing has played a meaningful role in their personal mental health journeys. Now, let's get back to our interview. Briar, you were just sharing with us how you write sometimes to help yourself process emotions, including grief. And I understand you have a poem to share with us that's related to that.
Yes. Absent from you. We scattered her ashes in a valley leading to the sea where lilies grew wildly. I could still hear her feet slapping the mud as she ran to the very edge of the shore before stopping just enough so that the water wouldn't touch her toes. When we threw her back to the sea, she rose in the sky with the wind, swirling through the air, dancing magnificently before us. The wooden table in the dining room is empty, naked without your chair, but I swore I saw you the other day, peeking at me kindly through jars of pickled goods and jam you used to love to dig your child hands into. Deep purples and reds sticking across your face from your mouth, the same color that now consumes your mother's at dinner. While we ate, we talked of you and the last light you'd made in this house, how your bedsheets haven't been changed since late August of that year, how the drawer of baby doll dresses you hated to wear on Easter still smelled like you, like powder and chamomile and lilies. After we drew together our eyes, we stopped talking. Each of our glasses now empty and stomachs now warm, but throats locked. We put our hands together and wept, crying for you, for one another, for lost childhood and wiped away time. Time that we agreed belonged to us by right. Time in your hospital room, laying beside you as you slept. Time saying goodbye that I was never handed, never offered. In this now consuming grief, this urge to again feel what I had not understood until it was sitting in front of me grasping my thumb, until it was no longer beside me at the dinner table, was finally the release I realized you wanted for us. Not to forget your scent or the pounding of your run, but the togetherness and love you understood we could only give to one another, absent from you.
I'm kind of speechless, but is there anything that you would want to say about that poem and, how writing it may have helped you?
That poem, I think, was one of the most emotionally rigorous to write. It was after I had kind of settled with the death of someone so close to me who was taken from us, really just taken at such a young age. I mean, she was 8 years old and it was sudden, and it was such a shock for me and for my family and everyone who knew what was going on because of how close we had all been. And I wrote this poem specifically after I went to her house and I had a dinner with her moms. And at the dinner table, I remember so clearly being just weeping and we were all holding each other and weeping, and we were talking about her passing, and one of her moms said, "I know that she can hear us, and I know that she wanted this, and I have to believe that to accept this."
Also with us today is Erin Kate Escobar, another former student of Patrice's. Erin Kate, how about you? How did you get started writing, and what kind of writing are you doing these days?
So I got started writing very young in probably kindergarten when, thank goodness, we had Spectra Arts in the classrooms, and Patrice came in as a Spectra artist to teach poetry classes. And what was that, age 5 or 6? And I think I've been writing ever since. And now I'm 35. So that gives us 30 years of writing in there, mostly little writing with the small W kind of writing that Patrice talked about. So I kept journals from a pretty young age, whether that was my poetry journal or just my personal thoughts and feelings journals. And I think that's progressed now in life to have multiple ways of thinking about how do I document and think about what life is about and what these feelings are. And I think I feel really grateful for that experience as a really young kid of being really validated in writing as a little W or a big W. You are always invited to share your writing. So it feels very normal to me that you would share something that maybe doesn't feel perfect, or you would share something that's just some thoughts and feelings to you, but it's brought to the world in a way that no one else could have done except for you. Um, so I think that process of learning that as a young kid has led me to be an adult who feels like, yeah, I can come on a radio show as a non-writer and share something I've written that to me is just words on a page, something I thought one day, and then gets to be shared with whomever is going to listen.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the ways that you journal? When we talked about you coming on the show, that really tickled me, and I'm wondering if you could share with listeners.
Yeah, so I probably have like 4 journals going on at a time, maybe 5. I have kind of that like stream of consciousness, just like wake up in the morning and let it out, or I come back from something that's frustrating and I just need to like let that exist and let it be on a page somewhere that maybe and hopefully no one's ever going to see. That is that stream of consciousness to maybe a journal that I keep my dreams in. So I might roll over in the morning and write what kind of came to my mind while I was dreaming. In that same dream journal, I think I do a lot of intention setting. So whether that's at the new moon or the full moon, some moon in between if I missed one of those, some place to set intentions for that are much smaller, like the next 2 weeks, the next 10 days, before the end of the week kind of intentions, instead of that like annual, maybe people do this at the beginning of the year, like this is my intention for the whole year. Woo, that scares the heck out of me. I'm a give me the next 3 days kind of intention person, and let me maybe write those on my wall so they're in my consciousness and they come to mind. Um, or like I said, a memory journal. So I have when I met my partner works in traumatic brain injury, and he mentioned going into clinics and people have a memory journal next to their bed and who came to visit on what day and what they did together. And I was like, that's brilliant. As somebody who identifies as not having a great memory, I want a memory journal of my life and who came to visit and what we did and what we talked about and why that felt important at that moment. And so one's, yeah, an ongoing memory journal that I would be happy for someone to find on the street and read those memories. And I love when friends or family will add to that memory journal too. So it's almost communal.
Well, I hope people will go to our website and take a look. There's a picture of Erin Kate with all her journals there. So I understand you also brought a poem to share with us today.
Yes. Love of my life. It took me daily practices, full moon and new moon rituals, groups of seeing mirrors, reclamation of emotions, mandalas, mountains, meaning making, long walks. Deep breaths, ongoing struggle to remember how to open the portal back to myself, to allow my shame and guilt and joy to coexist, my pleasure and guilt riding a tandem bike together while baking a cake, that delicious creation that could only be given to others on my own terms, made up of a recipe passed down from plants, medicine, ancestors, and a little bit of me. Cultivating my own self like a garden that needs tending, and noticing my emotions like the sound of the waves.
Is there anything that you would want to share about that poem and how it came to be, and maybe how writing it may have been powerful or helpful to you?
Yeah. I wrote this poem. My sister invited me to like a summer workshop for my birthday. Um, it was by her name's Goddess Anika, and it was a Lionsgate portal, and this was written in August of last year. And there were some terrific prompts and space created and ritual created. I think that can be really powerful. Oftentimes, I'll just sit down with a candle, or I'll light a scent around me, or create a moment in space where it's a little different than every other moment in space. So to create some ritual space, and sometimes to do that not alone is really powerful. To do that in community with others, ooh, it holds you accountable to staying there and being there, and also such a treat to get to hear sometimes how other people heard that same exact prompt and took it in a whole new direction. But I think it's really powerful. And it's really fun to read this Love of My Life poem, because it feels so warm and loving. And I, so many, I'd say many, growing up, many of those poems would have looked different. Um, and so it feels like I get to see a lot of growth that's led me to who I am now.
And it sounds like what you're saying is, even reading it today, you're sort of standing outside and seeing yourself anew in the poem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Patrice was referencing that earlier, that sometimes it's like a mirror for ourselves to see what we can't see from within.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patrice, I understand that you also brought some poems with you to share today, some poems from your former students. Would you want to share one of those now?
I'd love to. This was written by a boy named Bobby, about 30 years ago. And he wrote this after many days in a row when I came. He only wrote the words brown car on his paper. And this particular day, I said to him, I know you have something more inside of you than a brown car. And he wrote this: A warrior of steel. I am a boy, young and weird, but inside a warrior of steel, a mind of gold and a heart the size of an open valley. The sweet aroma of flowers and the tingle of the fresh breeze of air pass through me. My mind is full of thoughts and my heart full of joy. I have a sword shinier than the sun. I use it to fulfill my job, to destroy all the fear and anger that shadows over me like a cloud blocking the shine of my heart. He was 11 in fifth grade when he wrote that poem.
Wow. Ryer, I want to come to you because before coming on the show today, you shared with me that you struggle with some very specific mental health challenges. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to describe what those are and how you find writing specifically helps you meet those challenges.
Over, I want to say a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with BPD.
Do you want to define what that is for the listeners may not know?
For those who don't know, it is borderline personality disorder. And it was sort of a wake-up call for me in a lot of ways, being that most all of what I had perceived of my life as regular or normal and my means of thought and action, I was realizing were not the experience of those around me mostly, which was an interesting and sort of a shocking realization to have. With this, I think I really started to feel alone and unable to talk about it and not really understanding how I felt about being diagnosed with this and even about just experiencing it all the time. I think one of the most crucial parts, what makes mental health so crucial, is that there really is no escape from it. You are always in your own mind, and that's where you live. That's why it's so important to have good mental health and to practice good mental health and to take care of not only your body, but your soul and nurture those around you. And I was also diagnosed with OCD not too long ago. I want to say August of 2022.
For listeners, OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a related anxiety disorder and frequently part of borderline personality disorder. The anxiety is often a component of that.
Yes. And so because the two go hand in hand, what I learned was that OCD does this thing, it's like a moon, which I thought was really beautiful. And this is something my therapist told me, is it waxes and it wanes. And so it can be really intense and it can just be swarming and just swallow you whole. And you can't feel anything and everything is, you're hyper focusing and it's so intense. And then other days it'll be really gentle and sort of you're just more aware of smaller things, and which I always thought was kind of beautiful, and which is such a positive way to look at that. And writing was so crucial in my acceptance of all of this.
You're listening to State of Mind, Being Human and Living Well. I'm your host, Deborah Sloss. Today, we're revisiting a remixed conversation first recorded in 2023 with writer, poet, and teacher Patrice Vecchione, and joined by two of her former students, diversity trainer Erin Kate Escobar and high school student and writer Briar Spungen. Erin Kate and Briar have been sharing some of their own poetry with us, while Patrice has been reading poems from other students she's taught. Together, we've been exploring the many ways writing can be used to increase self-awareness, promote healing, and support mental health and wellness. Coming up, we'll continue our conversation about how creative expression through writing is a powerful tool for working through pain, deepening insight, and building resilience, and we'll hear more about the transformative impact this practice has had on our guests and contributors. Every State of Mind episode includes a resource list, and all those that we discussed today, along with many more, can be found in the show notes for this episode. You can listen or subscribe to our podcast on all the major podcast platforms or on your home smart speaker. Resources and listening information are available anytime at stateofmindmedia.org. And now, let's get back to our interview. Erin And Kate, you shared that you also have navigated some challenges in your life where writing has been helpful and a sort of a steadfast resource for you. You mentioned using other kinds of expressive arts. So I'm wondering if you could share how writing and or those other arts have provided support for you personally and your mental health.
Yeah. I think growing up in a small, predominantly white town like Santa Cruz, and growing up and being uh, a multi-ethnic and Jewish, and trying to figure out my sexuality and my gender, all those pieces. There was a lot of learning to do about who I was, and there was a lot of, I think, both self-labeling, but trying to take off the labels of others. And so I think writing was such a beautiful place that you just got to let it flow, try things on. Nothing felt permanent. You could rip it up, you could hide it away, you could hold it close, you could share it. There were so many options of how you could take the next step with something you were maybe just coming to terms with for your own self. So I think that is really powerful to have that agency, and how beautiful to have people like Patrice, guides along the way who invite you in to inspire you or try something differently, or you hear a poem that really moves you and you just write about what it moves in you, or a piece of writing, or prayer. So I think there's just a lot of really beautiful ways that, in processing those identities or processing the loss of a step parent, or somebody who was like a step parent to me very young, around age 8, I needed space to process that. And that was both done through writing, painting, dance, movement. So I feel like really grateful that I had multiple modalities to play in, to allow it to move through us, move through our bodies, move through our minds, have a different way to convey it that maybe is not a conversation, but is a different way to process. How do I hold all these pieces?
We're coming very close to the end of our time together, and I was wondering if you would want to share maybe some specific suggestions or even resources about what listeners, if they wanted to try to get started writing, what you might suggest to them. So it could be resources, it could be specific prompts that you found helpful. And I'm wondering, Patrice, if we could start with you.
Something I love to do is to buy a notebook, a plain notebook, and I decorate the cover of the notebook, and I spend a lot of time doing that. So it becomes like a treasure chest, but the treasure chest is empty until I start putting words in it. And inside the front covers and the back covers, I write quotes from other people, and they remind me that the endeavor I'm about to embark on is worthy and important. And so creating a sacred little space. The other thing I do when I can is I walk in nature for long distances. And I wrote almost an entire book. My book, Step into Nature, I wrote almost the whole book walking in nature, first on my hand and then in little notebooks. So getting away from the desk and away from actually the paper can also be deeply, deeply inspiring.
What about you, Briar? Do you have specific resources or prompts or practices that you have that really support you in your writing that you might want to share with listeners?
A lot of what has always helped me with writing is music. I think music is so essential to writing music, songs, or poetry. And listening to music, I listen to music when I write a lot of the time to help motivate me and to inspire me. And so if you're looking to write and you're not feeling anything, or you can't put it out correctly and you're feeling a little challenged, I always suggest putting something on that makes you feel good or maybe makes you feel sad. Every emotion is okay, and poetry should reflect that. I don't practice writing in anything tactical. I do a lot of writing on my phone primarily. That's been really essential in helping me write, because it's so easy to just pull out my phone and start writing when I have an idea, or write down fragments. Yeah. And as Patrice was saying earlier, nothing has to be finished. I have so many unfinished poems, more than I could probably count, really. And that's part of the fun. One day I'll have to compile them all together and see how that goes. But for now, unfinished is okay, as long as you feel good after you've written.
What about you, Erin Kate? What specific prompts, or maybe there are resources that you go to, or practices that you have that really support your writing and support your mental wellness?
Yeah, something that's really helped me get in the creativity zone was doing The Artist's Way, which is by Julia Cameron, which is a 12-week program that kind of takes you through many prompts and many ways to think about, how do I get to live the creative life that I want, whatever that looks like. And so she has a lot of practices like morning pages, which is that stream of consciousness invitation, to a weekly artist date, which is just 2 to 3 hours you carve out of your week to protect and do something that feeds your creative self, or something your little self would be so excited to do that you haven't made time for in a while. So just finding practices in daily, weekly, monthly ritual where I remember to sit down, or like putting the moons on my calendar to say, I want to sit down at the full moon and take 20 minutes with a cup of tea and a candle to think about what just happened over the last 2 weeks, or what am I ready to shed or let go of as the moon gets to shed. And then every time I look up at the moon, there's just a reminder of, oh yeah, I'm letting that go. I'm not listening. I'm letting go of one of those critics, or I'm hearing that voice, and I'm allowing you to exist and moving forward with something else I want to put my energy into. Or going with a different modality. Sometimes, like Patrice said, getting up and going out into nature. But for me, it's usually getting out some watercolors and paper and being like, I don't actually need words at all. I need color and texture, and like the decorating of the journal, or I need to cut things out of something. I need to glue something on.
I'm so glad you said cutting out, because a lot of people are very intimidated by creating something, that they think is artistic, but collage can be such a powerful tool too. Cutting, tearing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as we really come to the very end of our time together, I just want to ask, Briar, is there any final thoughts that you would want to leave our listeners with?
I would say, if you're interested in writing and you want to start writing as a tool to help yourself and to heal or whatever, be really kind with yourself and don't put pressure on the product or your abilities to create anything. What's so beautiful about art, what I've always admired about art growing up around it, is that it's subjective and there's no right or wrong. And that's what makes poetry so amazing, and that's what makes it so healthy as an outlet. Everything you write, everything you create is beautiful and good in its own right.
Erin Kate, what about you? Are there a couple of last thoughts you'd want to share with listeners?
I would say healing is a lifelong process. Don't stop trying. And it's deeply personal, and it feels very unique, and oftentimes it is, but it shouldn't necessarily always be done alone in a vacuum. So bring your friends, find community, sign up for a class that's going to allow you to process life differently than maybe what you might do just on your own.
And Patrice, what's one wisdom you've gleaned from your many years of helping people write that you'd want to share with our audience?
You get to choose what you believe. It's not foisted upon you, no matter what anyone has ever said. So sometimes when I'm writing and I feel self-conscious and I feel doubtful in my ability to say what I want to say, it's easy to fall into believing doubt, to think, oh, there's nothing here. I don't know what I'm doing. This is even after writing since I was in high school. It's a long time ago. And I remember, oh, where do I want to put my belief? Do I want to believe in my inability, or do I want to believe in my possibility? Choose possibility.
Well, that concludes the interview portion of our program. Next, we'll hear from State of Mind volunteer Yusuf Hassanein, who shares his In Your Voice story about how he used the pandemic as a time to turn inward and discover himself as a writer and poet.
When I would write worlds where a rocket comes to life, or when Michael Jordan mentors a bench warmer into becoming the best basketball champion of all time, my ideas only brought responses of polite smiles and superficial wows, but rarely a sense of acceptance. I've often felt out of place, and sharing my imagination became a litmus test for the people I wanted to surround myself with. So when the pandemic hit, I found myself truly isolated and alone, with nothing but my ideas. It was during this time that I was able to peel back the skin of isolation and turn my imagination into reflection. I tried my hand at multiple genres: adventure, mystery, essays, nonfiction, you name it. But then I decided to enter the world of poetry. As I slowly began to discover the beauty behind this art form, I came to admire its unique freedom to choose a word with intention, that light meditation between the pen and paper, as the outdoor leaves sway like soft maracas. It was very healing to encounter a genre that advocates for the elasticity of words. It's like my soul and heart could take a deep breath together, steadily comforting each other. The beauty of writing comes from the art of noticing. Noticing that the everyday world is far greater than what we might imagine. One that produces joy instead of judgment, and one that believes in the diversity of ideas. And so I wanted to share a poem I wrote that celebrates a diversity of viewpoints called The Time Capsule. Here it goes. In a capsule of time on the Upper West Side, the past and the future tend to collide. Both look like ghosts in misfortune. Past asks, what happens to us? More pain, less torture. Future smiles and keeps moving forward. Past trails behind, still thinking backwards. Future only holds big questions, always waiting to tell the answers. Past is kept impatient, waiting for any word to be this holy grantor. They dig through memories of first breaths, tossed caps, vows read in weddings. Past tires of future's lack of conversational dressings. How will we die? Still no reply. Not a simple sigh, still no reply. Maybe a white lie, a blink of an eye, still no reply. Just why? Future takes a pause and hands over a gift. Past looks up and asks, what is this I have to lift? Future continues to smile. Past resumes to ask, will this be unpleasant? And the future finally replies, embrace this. It's the present.
Thank you, Yusuf. You've been listening to State of Mind. Being human and living well.
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 I want to say a huge thank you to our guests, Patrice Vecchione, Briar Spungen and Aaron Kate Escobar, to our In Your Voice contributor Yusuf Hassanein, and to you for joining us. What we've heard today reminds us that writing isn't just about putting words on a page. It's about paying attention and noticing, listening inward, finding meaning, and giving voice to our lived experiences. Writing can help us process grief or pain, strengthen self-understanding, and connect us more deeply to ourselves and with others. We hope this conversation inspires you to explore your own creative writing process, whether that's through journaling, poetry, storytelling, or simply jotting down your thoughts. Any of these small acts of reflection can become powerful tools for healing, growth, and mental wellness. If you liked today's show, you may also enjoy episode 54, The Healing Power of Making Art, episode 55, Healing Through Movement and Dance, and episode 81, Self-Care in Hard Times, Recipes for Resilience. Each of these episodes expands on the ideas we explored today, that creativity in all its forms can support emotional well-being and help us live more fully. New episodes of State of Mind come out the first Sunday of every month, and you can find our full archive at www.stateofmindmedia.org. If you missed part of today's conversation, or you want to share it with someone, subscribe to the State of Mind podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. And if this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps others find these conversations and the support they may need. We want to hear from listeners and community members just like you. Share your story by submitting an In Your Voice recording. Call in or record a short audio clip right on your phone about a mental health experience, a recovery insight, or a resource that's been helpful to you. Your story may just be featured in a future episode. Submission details are at stateofmindmedia.org. Special thanks to our team, VJ Luca for audio production, Yusuf Hassanein for audio production and marketing direction, Evelyn Campbell for community coordination, Patrice Vecchione for In Your Voice story coaching, Tanmai Kadamani for transcriptions, Priscilla Yee and Grishma Jain for graphic design, Nimalan Ellen Chauvin for marketing, Austin Gautreau for media content creation, Ramya Pondicherry, Melanie Dominguez, and Sarah Eisenberg for research, and thanks to musician Adrian Legg and Favored Nations Entertainment for our theme music. State of Mind was developed and originally broadcast in association with KSQD-FM in Santa Cruz, California. Join us again next month for another episode of State of Mind. Until then, live well.